Shall we start this? Good morning, everybody. Did you have fun last night? Did everybody go to the concert? That was amazing. I'm still mad Alicia Keys didn't sing Girl on Fire. So my Uber driver blasted it for me on the way home. I was very happy, and so I sang in the car. So that was a good end to the night.
Are you gonna sing it today?
I'm not going to sing it today, so that's why my voice is halfway gone. I think it was my Uber ride home. Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for being at Dreamforce. I just found out I was doing the introduction slides, but I'm Meredith Schmidt with Salesforce. I've been with the company for 13 years. Really excited today to talk about our Jitterbit story, and I think we have some really unique use cases. Here with me today, Laura Jett, running a bunch of stuff on my sales compensation team, Christian Nicholas, running a bunch of stuff on our sales operations team, and Jason Bieber, my favorite IT person. I could not do this without him. So I always say thank you to Jason. Everybody be nice to him. I always tell my team that. We need him to be successful. So we're going to talk about our Jitterbit story today. And our safe harbor. You can read this online. It's my favorite slide. Joe, this is for you. We did give guidance yesterday. We're going to do estimating $12.5 billion next year. It's pretty incredible. I started with this company, and we were about 300 million. We had just gone public. And so really my journey here was all about creating revenue operations. And what is revenue operations at Salesforce? So when you think about revenue operations, it's really the quote to compensation process. Where does revenue start? It starts when you create a product. So we have product and pricing operations. We've got deal support, order management, billing. We've got some great success stories, but Jitterbit really is the tool that took us further. And I think without Jitterbit, we would not be as automated or scaled as we are today. So we're going to talk about just the story on proving quote to compensation. People call it quote to cash. I like to call it quote to comp now. Chris is going to talk about how we streamline order management. Laura's going to talk a bit about analytics and reporting. And Jason's going to talk about connecting the ecosystem and how we've really brought this story together. So, gosh, was it 4 years ago? There's a slide build. So Patrick Blair, one of our former sales leaders, came to me and said, Meredith, come join this Jitterbit demo with the sales engineer team. I'm like, why would I go look at an integration product? I run everything on the platform. I have no need to integrate to any system. I do send data to our GL and our back office ERP stuff. But I said, okay, let me go check them out. So we sat in this meeting, and basically it dawned on me in this meeting, and I had Chris with me in the meeting. And I said, wait a second, can I use this to automate process? And they're like, why not? And I realized what Jitterbit could do, and I've been telling George now, it's really about, I call it digital process automation. I think the term out there now is robotics and machines. But really, we found Jitterbit could be a tool for us to automate process. And we found a really unique use case that we're going to take you through today. We're talking about our challenges, right? We were data entry people. Nobody wants to really be data entry folks. So we wanted to find ways to capture data and automate data. How do you tell data what to do, right? So it says human errors. We don't make errors, but it's possible. So how do you take humans out of the element? And how do you actually become no longer the machine, but now we monitor the machines, right? How do I get access to real-time stuff? But I'm also growing 20%, 30% year over year. Working for the CFO, I don't get to grow that much. So I really had to figure out how am I going to scale the growth. Last year alone, we did 1.2 million transactions. We're estimating in 4 years from now, we'll have 3.5 million transactions running through the platform to generate much more than 12.5 billion, I hope. But again, it was this problem that we had, and we said, how are we going to really scale? So fast forward to today. We have built and integrated many processes, all with Salesforce as the center, as our platform. I like to call Salesforce our revenue platform now, right? Because all of our revenue starts in Salesforce. We have all of our controls there, all of our compliance. But again, because I'm using a single platform, I'm just transforming data. I'm not having to integrate, again, just to the ERP system, but how is it going to actually integrate these processes, albeit on the platform? So we use analytics, Service Cloud, you name it, we probably use it. So when I look at how am I going to support this growth, one of the crazy things is, although we grew to 1.2 million orders, we reduced our headcount in order management. And Chris is going to talk a bit more about that. I have less than 10 people today, globally, processing 1.2 million orders a year. That's pretty incredible. And so I'm actually going to hand this over to Chris and talk a bit more about the order management store, because I think this is really where we saw the most innovation and the biggest results. Chris?
Nope.
Oh, sorry. We're going to do compensation first. Laura, talk about compensation.
Awesome. So my journey at Salesforce started about 5 years ago. And as Meredith was touching on, Salesforce looked like a much different company 5 years ago. There were about 10,000 employees. Now we've grown to about 30. And 100% of our transactions in the sales comp world were manual. And this led to a lot of different challenges on the sales compensation side. Low value add transactions. Whether a transaction was $1 or $1 million, we were looking at 100% of them manually. Mundane task, clicking over and over and over again. And in today's world, with trying to retain talent, mundane tasks are not what millennials are looking for. High transaction growth. Meredith also touched on this. 20 to 30% year over year. How can we scale with looking at every single transaction? And then last, low efficiency. Now, in revenue operations, our customer is sales. And if we have low efficiency when calculating compensation, our customers aren't going to be very happy. It took about 7 days on average to calculate commissions when we started this journey 5 years ago. So I remember a conversation Meredith had with me and said, hey, we could do Jitterbit with sales comp. And Chris is going to talk a little bit more about how OM had automated it, but she was like, you should really talk to Chris because his team is implemented. I was not an IT person. I am not technical at all. My career's been in finance. And I thought to myself, can I really do this? And absolutely. In less than 2 weeks, I was able to get the permissions to Jitterbit and integrate the end-to-end process. And the results are quite astounding. 80% of orders were automated, saving about 5 to 7 headcount. And the most important part is an increase in accuracy. Our customers' sales now are happier because their commissions are now calculated more accurately. And so what's the future with sales compensation with Jitterbit? A couple of things. One of the best parts of Jitterbit is that it's able to adapt to business changes very quickly. So if we change something in sales compensation, we can adapt right away. So now Chris is going to talk about streamlining order management.
Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Chris Nicholas, and I am the business owner of our internal quote-to-cash processes and systems. And so, for anyone who manages back office processes, you're always presented with the challenge of how do you increase efficiency with limited resources. You have limited funding for IT spend and limited funding for headcount. And so, from that initial meeting that we had with Jitterbit 4 years ago, we immediately identified it as something we could use in helping us scale for the future. And so we created this mantra that if it's reportable and repeatable, it's automatable. And so our initial use case was to identify our quote conversion process. And so we took advantage of data that we're collecting through that process, as well as some existing technical capabilities that we have to help facilitate that process. And so in one day, we were able to build an operation that would extract data, evaluate it, assess it, and then essentially approve the transaction that would allow us to capitalize on our current technical capabilities. And so doing something like that literally took 3 days, 1 day to build a proof of concept, 1 day to sort of socialize and test, and then 1 day to actually implement. And so the results since then have been outstanding. So from Q2 to Q2 FY14 for us to our last quarter, we've moved from 22% of our transactional volume sort of going through this process to as high now as 82% of our transaction volume going through this process with no human intervention, but getting the quality of evaluating whether these are good orders or not. And so we've been able to do a couple of things that I would want to point out with the numbers is, we've been able to make adjustments, like Laura mentioned, based off of business conditions. So it does play in well to our integration strategy or changes in our business environment. So you can see a slight dip on a couple of quarters, but that's because we're integrating companies, and so we want to change our logic around what we should be auto-converting or not, or reviewing or not. And you could also see that we previously had multiple business processes and systems that intervened in this process, and so we've actually been able to deprecate some technical functionality because of our use with Jitterbit, and that's the shift that you see moving the web store and DocuSign aspects away from the process. And so we now have all of our logic housed in this particular operation. And we've now been continuing to evolve around the process and use Jitterbit in other ways. And so I have on the slide that we have 29 active operations, but in the time between creating the slides and today, we've actually introduced 2 new business processes. So we have 31 operations active on Jitterbit, managing different aspects of our manual business, or taking over manual business processes. So 31 things that Jitterbit is helping us with to automate our processes, and all of those take less than a day to build. And so with as a finance person, it's important to be mindful of our SOX controls and audits, and so we've introduced new controls that are more effective and more efficient because we can automate 100% of the transactions that flow through Jitterbit. And so the more recent thing is it's actually been a good tool in helping us determine our prioritization with IT. It allows us to do a little bit of test before you build, or try before you buy. So we're really able to figure out what the right logic is behind the things that we want IT to build. And it also allows us to make more strategic investments on transformational and large initiatives because we can manage small, minor enhancements through Jitterbit operations. And so the last thing I would say, and I've talked to the team about this, is it's a great way to embrace the concept of being a trailblazer. So like Laura mentioned, I'm the same way. I have no technical background. But this has enabled me, and as well as other users within our org, to really make immediate changes to things that they don't like. So we're able to change process immediately. And it helps our company be more effective, but it also helps people appreciate the things that they're doing day to day and get away from the mundane routine activities.
Great.
Okay, so
Back to Laura. Thanks, Chris. That was an amazing story. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to talk about analytics, which is my now role. I was in sales comp before. Now I'm in overall revenue operations analytics. And this has truly been a game changer on the analytics front. And so let's go through the story a little bit. So about 2.5 years ago, prior to Jitterbit, in the analytics world, we did all of our analysis through Excel. And this caused so many different challenges. First, we're grabbing data from all over the place and manipulating the data all in Excel. And as Salesforce grows and Excel row limitations don't, we were hitting the capacity, and we were having to have multiple files for all, one process. And that was kind of a pain. And outdated data. Our executives don't want to see 3-week-old data. How can they really be running their business with 3-week-old data? Because it takes so long on operational processes. And again, it goes back to retaining that talent. Do we want people in analytics doing the same mundane tasks over and over again? So the Jitterbit journey started again, and what I call it in the analytics side is operationalizing data analytics. So the first step was identifying all the sources of data that we were pulling through Excel. And then once we get all those different sources, we're then transforming the data and manipulating it so it'd be consumable on data visualization, which we leverage Einstein Analytics. PowerPoint and Excel are not the future for looking at analytics. Being able to manipulate data through data visualization is. And so we were able to go end to end in a little bit less than a month. Because there were so many different sources of data, we needed to make sure it was capturing correctly. And the results were pretty astounding. Today, we are powering 5 Einstein Analytics dashboards, running 30 queries daily. Every day when we come into the office, all 30 of those queries have been ran, 3 million rows of data. And so if I walk in the door, I can see my analytics dashboard already updated, and that's a time savings of 10 hours per dashboard. So if you think about it, if it's running every single day, that's 50 hours a day. Of course, a human can't do that. Robotics can, though. And the Jitterbit platform, and using a Jitterbit integration that can kind of house all of this data is definitely a game changer. So a few different examples of dashboards that we're using. Kind of a fun one that we're building right now is we're going to be monitoring quoting Jitterbit through Einstein Analytics. So it's kind of like Jitterbit on Jitterbit.
Nice.
Then we also, I go back to our customer, sales. When sales has a question about quoting, about sales compensation, they log a case. And we want to be able to prevent those cases from even happening in the first place. So we're monitoring real-time data. If quarter end's coming up and we want sales to know about something, we can send an email and leverage the data that we have.
Chatter.
Exactly, Chatter. There we go. Very quick. And then DocuSign adoption, it's our e-signature platform, and approvals. So I'm going to actually hand it over to Jason to talk about connecting the ecosystem.
Again, Laura, amazing results.
Yeah.
I get surprised every time I see these slides. It gets better and better every time. It's amazing. Jason, take it away.
All right, thank you. Poll. Anybody here already have Jitterbit in their ecosystem someplace? Okay, we got some seasoned folks in the room and some folks looking to learn. So I'm going to talk about some concepts. And one of the things that I think is really important when you start out on this journey is understanding how it is that your technology service provider, your IT group, and your business partners are going to be able to work together. One of the things that works really well for us at Salesforce, working in between IT and the revenue operations group, is having some clear roles. Knowing what it is that IT is really good at and understanding how it is that the business needs to be able to be flexible and adaptive to the changing environments, new product introductions, new acquisitions, new markets we're trying to get into, and thinking through how you're going to establish this platform within and across your company is really important. We've taken an approach where IT's role in the Jitterbit arena is providing the service to the enterprise, keeping it accessible, keeping it available, and keeping it secure. So the audit capability that we've been able to realize through Jitterbit really keeps IT out of the room in a lot of the conversations. You heard from Chris about creating new business process automations in a day. I can't do that in IT, but what I can do is create an environment where that sort of thing is possible and can remain compliant. And turning over some of those expectations can be a challenge. So there's a little bit of a change management journey that you might anticipate as you start to look at a solution like Jitterbit, or if you're already using Jitterbit and looking to get more out of it, being able to be open and confronting, where are all of these actors going to play a part, and being conscious and upfront about that. I'm frequently trying to sneak in some bit of wisdom that I picked up from my grandfather. And so he taught me a little bit about how to play golf, and that it's you drive for show, but you putt for dough, right? You don't really win or lose at golf based on what you do in the tee box in that first shot that you want to make go 250 yards. You really win or lose on the small things. Those are what are going to really make a big difference. It's important to be able to see the whole environment, right? So before you take a running leap at it, really understand what it is that you're playing for and how long that's going to that potential for that to play out is. And then get yourself confidence by trying to do small things first. There will absolutely be an opportunity for replacing or disrupting in a very big way, and those are important waypoints for you to plot out on the journey. Those are really going to be unnecessarily challenging to take on first and to take on early. We think we've found a lot of value in knowing where there are existing opportunities and existing challenges that aren't being met. That can really give the teams that are working on this a lot of confidence. It can show the value to any executive stakeholders you have for why it is this is good and why it is that increased investment is really going to pay off. And the numbers that we've seen over the scale of growth that we've had without really the expense side of it, that's just a testimony to the power and the benefit of that approach. So try and find something new. Don't try and replace something that's already there. It's a really tough job to do first thing. There's a real important difference that I've learned only fairly recently around the difference between integration and migration. And we've taken this approach when we at Salesforce are integrating a company that we've acquired. And we make a conscious distinction between what's integrating and what's migrating. Integrating for us means keeping operations paralleled and information paralleled in multiple systems at the same time. For lots of reasons, when you're integrating a company that has been acquired or a new division that's starting up, there's a need and a value in maintaining some autonomy for some amount of time. But sharing that information across teams and across the technology landscape can be really important, helping eventually integrate the culture and the operations of those for those individuals and those business processes. This is a pattern that we've pretty much standardized for the last, I'm going to say, 2.5 years of integrating before we migrate. Because for us, migrating is a pretty serious event where if you think about the times in your life that you've moved, moved apartments, moved homes, that's a big disruptive thing. Like your stuff is no longer where it used to be, and it's going to be rearranged in the place where you're going to put it. That's an important distinction for us, and we've gotten pretty clear that those are very different operations. And so know that going in. But unlike moving your home, when you're moving information, when you're moving data around, you get to practice. No one wants to, practice moving their bed or their dining set or other furniture around. But in this case, you get to do that. And it's been my experience that when you go migrating data, practice at least 3 times. If you're not practicing this at least 3, you can call it a dry run from back in the old, bootlegger days, or pre-productions. There's all kinds of names you can call this, but for us, it takes at least a few different tries of doing this before we do it for real with live data in production. And the keeping people around who have some institutional knowledge, who can really look at the information where it's landed, have the business context to know whether it happened right and is going to meet that expectation of a singular operational result is very important. And there's just not a good way that we found to replace that. So keeping people around while you're going through that transformation is really important. We're lucky enough to have Sada Sivarao-Kanaganti here, who is the architect of one of the most complicated processes that I've ever been a part of. We call it Go for Growth. This is how Salesforce prepares its sales teams with understanding who their prospects and customers are going to be on an annual recurring basis. And for us, Jitterbit is absolutely essential to how it is we're able to pull this off. When I started at Salesforce 11 and a half years ago, we were the size company where we could do this on spreadsheets. When I moved into IT about 5 years ago, this process took, I think it was about 6 weeks to get executed, from the time we defined how we were going to go to market, what the territories were going to be, to actually getting sales teams and specialists and support staff all assigned to those accounts took like half a quarter. Well, that's not going to work. So rethinking how we do this and applying the amazing capabilities that Jitterbit has for processing speed and for scale and responsiveness, we've been able to shrink that down for some of these operations that used to take days, now take minutes. For some of these operations that used to take weeks, take days. And now we're typically done, we start this at the beginning of February, we're usually done Valentine's Day for almost all of the global selling force at Salesforce. It's also archived, it's available, it's auditable, it's an amazing thing. And I can't imagine now how we would go about doing this and get acceptable results that drive the growth that fuels the company that we've seen.
All right. Okay. Well, before I say thank you, Jason. I can't remember life before Jitterbit anymore. And I just want to say thank you, to Jitterbit. And I think it's been really fun, right? To come and start with this one use case of trying to automate order management, and then seeing what we've done from there is pretty amazing. So thank you guys for being the innovators and trailblazers for Salesforce. It's really, truly amazing. Thank you for Jitterbit for helping us and opening our eyes to new use cases, and I can't wait to continue to see what we do with Jitterbit. We're going to start looking at accounting next. So I think the journey is still continuing. We've got a long road ahead. And I just want to say thank you. And if there's any questions, we have a mic in the room, so I think that's supposed to be for questions. I don't know. Okay, George, please.
I'll throw a question. First, congrats. I mean, what you've all achieved in the last 4 or 5 years, I got to be part of the beginning, and kudos. In fact, I share with people, Meredith, that you have been promoted many times, and I tell them it's because of all the success of this project.
Because of Jitterbit, thank you.
So all of you, not only the business transformation, but your career growth. Any regrets, maybe this is to both you and Jason, in the beginning, and maybe you didn't want to share this, but Meredith, you made a lot of progress without full buy-in at the time with IT. You didn't have to, and eventually you did.
Yes.
Any regrets? Because we talk to thousands of companies every year, and they're trying to figure out, how far do I go without IT involvement versus not? Suggestions for the team?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. When we first did our agreement with Jitterbit, we were running it on a computer underneath somebody's desk. And we had to ask for a computer because I don't even know what they're called.
Desktops.
What?
A desktop.
A desktop. I'm like, what are those called now? We had to get a desktop. I'm like, who gets a desktop anymore? But we had to get one to run Jitterbit. And I told Jason what we were doing. And he's like, okay. And he was like, okay, just keep doing what you're doing. And then at some point, we're like, okay, we got to show IT what we're doing. And at some point, we did show you. Mm-hmm. And it was really more from the control side, is we know we can run this as a business user, and that's the power of Jitterbit, is we can do this and change things in a minute, right? A business rule changes, we can go update our script, and there's no code, which is great because we're not coders. But I think at some point it was really important to say, hey, from a compliance and control environment, at a company of this size, public company, let's make sure we're doing what's right. I think that's where we got Jason involved.
Yeah, that's right. And that portion of the consideration of the landscape and what roles are going to play, that really came out of this conversation. Hey, we've got this Jitterbit thing. We're moving some data around. We're chasing some flags on a quote. Okay, that's fine. And then I got to really understand like the size of role it was playing, and I got kind of concerned that this capability
We
was
just automated 80% of our job. Is that
running
okay,
under
Jason?
running under somebody's desk outside of IT general controls, and that was an important entree into the conversation. But I wouldn't say that's a bad place to start. Right? I think the lesson learned in this is to be open and have the conversation about thinking big. Where do you think this could go? But don't let that stop you from starting. I think it's super valuable to find something to prove the value, to prove the concepts, and then build on that. Don't wait for IT. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's pretty fun now. We're talking about all sorts of issues, going over project lists. I'm like, can Jitterbit do that? It's literally my first question is, can Jitterbit do it? And I think a lot of times the answer is yes, and that's been really fun. Okay, did you have one more question? Yeah.
I did. First of all, thank you. You guys, it was a great presentation. So right now I'm using Jitterbit for an integration to our ERP system. So we only have the free trial. I'm really interested about automating business processes with Jitterbit. Now, I did a little bit of research. I saw that there's different packages or different subscription levels with Jitterbit. To do real true automation, does it require the top of the line package or subscription with Jitterbit?
I think we started really small, actually.
Okay.
I think we started with the most basic package just on our first use case. I think we've expanded since then because you see how Jitterbit's kind of gone across the company. We're using it for integrations and for M&A and such. So I think we've upgraded since then. But when we started with business process, it was literally the most basic addition.
Okay, great.
Because we weren't integrating to anything else. We were just transforming data. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I think you can start small and go big.
Yeah.
That's what George would tell me.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day at Dreamforce.